There is no safe space in power. Every glance, every gesture, every word is a broadcast of your self-worth or your self-betrayal. What you think is harmless may be the exact signal that ends your respect in the room. Machiavelli never taught people how to be loved. He taught them how not to be destroyed. Erase the weak habits, replace them with silence, posture, and refusal. Because in a world full of watchers, even the smallest mistake is enough to give yourself away. They won't attack your strength. They'll wait for the flinch, the hesitation in your eye, the twitch in your jaw, the breath you hold too long. Weakness doesn't need words. It bleeds through skin, and when it does, it calls to predators like blood in the water. You thought silence made you invisible, but it doesn't. It just makes them look closer. You're not safe because you said nothing. You're in danger because you felt something. And someone, somewhere, saw it. Now they know exactly where to strike. According to Machiavelli, first habit is the habit of explaining yourself. He who explains himself surrenders the power of mystery and invites judgment he could have avoided. Machiavelli, they don't even need to accuse you. All they have to do is raise an eyebrow, and suddenly you're talking too much, trying to prove something, trying to convince them of your worth, trying to explain why you are the way you are. But they never asked for all that. They just stood there, quiet, letting the silence rot your confidence, letting your need to be understood betray you. You think if they know the full picture, they'll see your side, that they'll be kind, that they'll understand. They won't, because they're not listening for truth. They're listening for cracks. And when you speak too long, you give them what they couldn't see. Doubt, insecurity, a weakness you didn't even know was leaking through your voice. Every sentence you add is a weapon in their hands. Every clarification, a rope you wrap tighter around your own throat. You didn't protect yourself by being honest. You exposed yourself by being available. Explaining is begging. It's telling the world, please don't misunderstand me. But the moment you ask not to be judged, they already have. Power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't need to. When someone powerful walks into a room and says nothing, people lean in. They wonder. They fear. Because mystery forces the mind to fill in the gaps. And the imagination is always more terrifying than the truth. But when you explain yourself, you erase that power. You hand them the script. You give them the ending. And once they have that, they stop watching. Because there's nothing left to figure out, nothing left to respect, nothing left to fear. You kill your presence every time you feel the urge to defend your decisions. They don't want your reasons. They want your reaction. So give them silence. Let them sit in it. Let them twist in their own assumptions. They'll call you cold. They'll say you're arrogant. They'll accuse you of hiding something. But deep down, they'll wonder, what do you know that they don't? And that question will haunt them because it means you still have control. Control over their attention. Control over the narrative. Control over yourself. The ones who need to be liked, they explain. The ones who need to be trusted, they explain. The ones who can't stand judgment, they explain. But you've learned the cost, because the more they know, the easier it is to destroy you. So you don't explain anymore. You don't justify. You don't shrink to make others comfortable. Let them misunderstand. Let them talk. Let them guess. Because while they're speaking, you're watching. And while they're trying to figure you out, you're already 10 moves ahead. According to Machiavelli, the second habit is nervous movement. Men are watched more by the eye than judged by the heart. Power must look like power, or it is nothing. You can say everything right, and still, they won't believe you. Because your body told a different story. Your fingers tap the table. Your eyes dart left and right, too fast. Your feet shift beneath the chair. Your posture folds inward, like you're trying to disappear. You smile, not because you're at ease, but because you're terrified not to. You think they don't notice. You hope they're listening to your words. But power isn't heard, it's seen. And every nervous tick tells them, you're not in control. When you enter a room and adjust your clothes too much, when you laugh too quickly or nod too often, you give yourself away before you've spoken a word. I know this because I did it too. Fidgeting, apologizing with my body, trying to seem safe, likable, harmless. But harmlessness is invisible. No one fears it. No one respects it. No one follows it. The world doesn't trust what looks unsure of itself. It doesn't bow to the person asking for approval with their body. Machiavelli understood. Power must not only exist, it must appear. Power without presence is a ghost, and presence begins with stillness. Stillness is discipline. You aren't born with it. It's a habit you build after you've been humiliated one too many times. When you flinch at criticism, they sense weakness. When you over-explain, they sense guilt. When you smile to please, they stop taking you seriously. But when you stop moving, when you slow everything down, something shifts. I began training myself to sit with silence, to let awkwardness linger and not try to fill it, to slow my blinking, to pause before I speak, to hold eye contact long enough that it becomes uncomfortable. For them, not me. I practiced breathing slowly, even when I wanted to escape. I trained my hands to stay still in my lap. No twitching, no folding, no covering my mouth like I had something to hide. I walked into rooms like I was already in control, not because I felt it, but because they needed to. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was irreversible. People started watching differently. They didn't interrupt. They asked fewer questions. They spoke softer, like they were stepping around something heavy. And that's when I knew it was working. Because stillness doesn't just hide your fear. It forces them to sit with their own. People expect noise. They expect eagerness. They expect your body to ask for their approval. But when you give them nothing, no movements, no ques, no flinches, they project everything onto you. And in that silence, you control the room. Power isn't volume. It's absence. Absence of desperation. Absence of doubt. So stop explaining. Stop adjusting. Stop seeking comfort through movement. Stand still. Speak less. And let the discomfort be theirs to carry. Because in a world addicted to validation, the one who never asks for it is the one they can't stop watching. The third habit is the habit of seeking reassurance. According to Machiavelli, he who needs approval to act has already lost control of his outcome. You ask, was that okay? You think it's harmless? Just a question, just a moment of connection. But that question is a broadcast. It tells the room something about you, louder than you think, more destructive than you know. It says, you doubt yourself, and worse, you need them to fix it. Every time you seek reassurance, you fracture your own authority. You signal that your decisions aren't whole until someone else seals them with approval. I used to do it constantly. I'd check their faces, search their eyes for signs I did something wrong. I wouldn't even realize it. But I was leaking power from every glance. When you need reassurance, you're not moving from certainty. You're reacting to reactions shaped by the echo of their judgment. And when your compass spins like that, It's only a matter of time before someone else starts steering. You think people will like you more if you ask for feedback, if you make them feel needed, but that's not how power works. They don't respect the man who checks in. They respect the one who doesn't flinch. Every, did I do that right? Every, do you think this was good enough? Every pause to gauge their expression. It feeds their control and drains yours. You think it makes you humble. It doesn't. It makes you replaceable, because once they sense that you need their approval, they realize they have leverage, and people don't admire what they control. They use it, then discard it. I remember being in rooms where I could feel my own weakness rising. My voice would shake, not because I didn't know what I was doing, but because I was waiting for a nod, somebody to tell me I was allowed to be confident. And when they didn't, I collapsed inside. They won't always say it out loud, but they'll feel it. They'll sense your fragility. And once they do, they'll stop listening, not because you're wrong, but because you've already told them your power depends on them. That's what reassurance seeking is. A confession. You're confessing that your belief in yourself is conditional. You want to stop? Then start with silence. Don't ask if it was good enough. Don't check their face for feedback. Don't rewrite yourself based on their mood. Decide, act, own it, even if you're unsure. Especially when you're unsure, because confidence isn't certainty. It's refusal. Refusal to let the world vote on your worth. They don't need to agree. They don't even need to understand. You're not here to be approved. You're here to be remembered. And no one remembers the man who asked for permission to lead. They only remember the one who didn't. The fourth habit is over-agreeing. According to Machiavelli, to flatter often is to make yourself smaller than the man you wish to please, and the small are never feared. You nod when you disagree. You smile when something feels off. You say, "You're right," even when you know they're not. You think you're being polite, but you're just being erased. That's the truth about over-agreeing. It's not a social skill. It's a survival instinct. But survival has a price. And that price is always your identity. Every time you agree just to avoid discomfort, every time you hold back your truth to seem nice, you become smaller, duller, forgettable. People say they like agreeable people, but they don't follow them. They don't respect them. They don't fear them. Because people don't trust those who bend too easily. At first, over-agreeing feels safe. You get smiles, approval, inclusion. But over time, it becomes a silent betrayal of yourself. You slowly begin to disappear. And when you're finally invisible, no one looks for you. You weren't born like this. You were trained. Maybe you were punished for having an opinion. Maybe approval was the only way to feel loved. So you learned to nod, to flatter, to vanish beneath the needs of others. But flattery doesn't build connection. It builds hierarchy. You make yourself lower to raise them up. And as Machiavelli warned, the small are never feared. You become the echo, never the voice. You become the reflection, never the presence. And people notice. They may not say it, but they feel it. That subtle desperation in your smile, that eagerness in your yes, that fear behind your compliments. They feel it. And they back away because people trust tension more than perfection. They respect those who say no, those who challenge, who push back, who hold ground. You think being agreeable makes you likable. It doesn't. It doesn't. It makes you replaceable. They use your kindness. They drain your silence. And when you finally say, enough, they call you difficult, not because you are, but because they only liked you when you were easy to manipulate. And here's the twisted part. They never truly liked you. They liked how you made them feel. Superior, right, safe. But the moment you stop feeding that, they leave. Because over-agreeing doesn't build loyalty. It builds dependency and resentment. So if you're always the first to agree, ask yourself, what are you protecting? Is it the relationship? Or is it your fear of being disliked? Because approval is a drug, and like any drug, it dulls your instincts. It makes you chase harmony at the cost of truth, and the cost is always higher than you think. You'll wake up one day surrounded by people who like you, but don't know you, don't respect you, don't follow you, because they've only met the mask, the real you. You buried that a long time ago. So stop agreeing when your soul says no. Stop nodding just to keep peace. Stop flattering people who wouldn't bleed for you. Because silence can be strength, but false agreement is always weakness. And in a world ruled by power, that kind of weakness is fatal. The fifth habit is self-mocking humor, according to Machiavelli. A man who laughs at himself first removes the fear others should have of him. They laughed. You laughed with them. You thought it made you relatable, safe, easy to be around. But slowly, you noticed they stopped taking you seriously. You'd speak, and their eyes would wander. You'd make a point, and they'd smirk. You'd express pain, and they'd say, "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic." Because somewhere along the way, you taught them not to respect you. Self-mocking humor. It's a soft mask for something brutal. You use it to disarm people, to diffuse tension, to signal that you don't take yourself too seriously. But here's the thing. They believe you. They believe you when you say you're forgetful. They believe you when you call yourself lazy. They believe you when you laugh and say, "I'm such an idiot." They may laugh with you, but inside, a judgment is made, and it doesn't fade. You just made their job easier. They don't have to belittle you. You do it for them. You think it shows confidence, but confidence doesn't humiliate itself for applause. Real confidence is silent, steady, unapologetic. It doesn't need to self-deprecate to feel accepted, because every time you joke about your flaws, they get written in ink. You're writing your weakness into the script of who you are, right in front of them. And the worst part? You start believing it too. You become the image you perform, the clown, the fool, the relatable mess. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are behind closed doors. If in public, you play dumb for laughs, they won't remember your insights. They'll remember the act. You were never seen as a threat because you laughed away the edge. And Machiavelli understood something terrifying. Fear protects more than charm. When people fear offending you, they step carefully. When they fear losing your approval, they behave. But when you make yourself the joke, you give them permission to stop fearing you. And people don't respect what they don't fear. That's why the quiet ones are so unsettling. They don't need to tell jokes to be liked. They don't shrink to fit into rooms. They don't dull their edge to make others comfortable. You did. You still do. But deep down, you know it's not funny anymore. You feel the weight behind every laugh. You feel the ache when they don't take you seriously. You feel it in the silence that follows your voice. You want to be heard, but you train them to ignore you. So stop. Stop mocking yourself to earn their affection. Stop branding yourself as harmless. You weren't born to be a punchline. You were meant to be remembered, feared, respected. They can't do any of those things. As long as you keep teaching them to laugh, Because once you've made them comfortable mocking you, they never stop. And eventually, neither will you. Sixth habit is the habit of over-explaining boundaries. According to Machiavelli, a ruler does not ask permission to draw a line. He simply punishes those who cross it. They didn't respect your boundary because you gave them room not to. You thought if you explained it enough, they'd understand. If you showed your heart, your softness, your good intentions, they'd comply. But here's what you didn't see. The moment you justify your limit, you invite a debate. And once it becomes a discussion, it's no longer a boundary. It's a suggestion. You said, "Please don't call me at night." And when they laughed, you smiled. You said, "It just makes me anxious." And they replied, "Don't be so sensitive." You let them in, not through silence, but through softness. You gave them reasons, and reasons can be torn apart. A strong boundary isn't loud. It isn't soft. It doesn't come with disclaimers or apologies. It doesn't bend to keep the peace. It stands, and it punishes. That's the part you avoided. Punishment, consequence, the coldness that makes a line real. But Machiavelli knew the truth. People only respect what they fear, and they only fear what they cannot move. You wanted them to like you and obey you, but power doesn't work like that. You wanted their understanding. Instead, you trained them to test you, to see how much they could press, to find the gap between your words and your actions. So every time you explain your boundary, what they hear is, "I'm asking you to accept this," not, "I dare you to cross it." And that one shift changes everything. Because if your boundary can be reasoned with, it can be ignored. They're not listening to your feelings. They're scanning for weakness. So they push, and you fold. And they never even realize it. You call it communication. They call it permission. You think you're being clear. They see an open gate, the truth. If your boundary needs to be explained, it's already lost. Cold silence draws the line. Cold action enforces it. And anything warmer than that just invites them to cross. So the next time you want to say, "I don't like this, but it's okay," or "This makes me uncomfortable, but I understand," stop. Because if you're still explaining, you're not protecting, you're pleading, and they know it. Power isn't about being understood. It's about not needing to be. And those who don't explain themselves are the ones no one dares to question. If you have to justify your boundary, you never had one to begin with. The seventh habit is the habit of oversharing. Personal struggles. The more wounds you show, the more predators you attract. According to Machiavelli, they nod, they smile, they pretend to care. But the moment you tell them too much, something shifts. They stop seeing you as human and start seeing you as vulnerable. You think you're bonding. You think you're building trust. But what you're actually doing is opening the vault. You're handing them every tool they need to break you later. It doesn't happen instantly. They store it, catalog it. They wait. They wait until the day they need it. And then they strike. You told them about your depression. Now they question your stability. You shared your childhood trauma. Now they use it to explain why you're overreacting. You admitted financial stress. Now they treat you like you're desperate. You gave them truth. They turned it into leverage. This is the price of emotional exposure. It feels warm in the moment, but later it burns quietly, slowly, like acid behind a smile. You want to be seen, but being seen means being watched. And not everyone watching you wants the best for you. There's a difference between vulnerability and strategy. One invites intimacy. The other invites attack. They tell you to be real, to open up. But Machiavelli would whisper, reveal nothing that can be used against you. Silence isn't emptiness. It's armor. Composure isn't coldness. It's control. Think of the people you respect the most, the ones who move quietly, who speak little, who never complain. You feel their power because you can't access their pain. You can't weaponize what you don't see. Oversharing is seductive. It promises relief, but what it delivers is regret. You told them you were anxious. Now they question your leadership. You told them about your breakup. Now they call you emotionally unstable. You thought you were humanizing yourself, but in their mind, you just lost value. You see, people don't admire brokenness. They study it. They analyze it. And eventually, they use it. And the worst part? They'll never tell you they're doing it. They'll smile. They'll nod. They'll hug you. And in the next room, they'll call you weak. That's the part that haunts you, not the sharing, but the silence that follows. Because when you overshare and the room gets quiet, that's not connection. That's calculation. You just gave the enemy your playbook. So next time, before you confess, pause. Ask yourself, are you speaking to a friend or to a future enemy? You'll never know. And that's the point. Because Machiavelli didn't say, tell them your wounds. He said, never show what can be exploited. A ruler who cannot tolerate silence will always lose control to the man who does. According to Machiavelli, you speak because you're afraid not to. Because silence makes you feel exposed, naked, judged, rejected. So you fill it with small talk, with nervous laughs, with opinions you don't believe, with stories no one asked for. You call it conversation, but it's desperation in disguise. You think if you keep talking, they'll like you, that they'll see you as confident, charming, alive. But they don't. They see it for what it is. Fear. Fear of being invisible. Fear of being unapproved. Fear of being alone with your own voice. You've never realized how loud insecurity is until you watch someone talk just to escape their own silence. Because here's the truth. The powerful don't rush to speak. They sit in silence like it's their throne. They know. Whoever breaks the quiet first loses. You see it in meetings. The man who speaks second owns the room. You see it in conflict. The one who waits makes the other reveal too much. Silence is control. It's gravity. It pulls people in, makes them over-explain, overcompensate, overexpose. And once they do, you know where to strike. But if you're always the first to speak, you reveal your position, you reveal your emotions, you reveal your need. And people don't respect need, they exploit it. You don't need to be cold, but you must be composed. Learn to pause. Learn to let others drown in the discomfort you've mastered. Because in that discomfort, you become untouchable. You don't fill silence anymore. You own it. It becomes your armor, your message, your test. You'll start to notice the more silent you are, the more people try to fill the void for you. They confess, they stumble, they reveal, not because you asked, but because they couldn't stand the silence you command. And that's when you understand the game. They break themselves just to feel you, because people will say anything to avoid silence. But silence will say everything about you. So speak when necessary. Respond with intention. Let pauses become pressure. Let quietness become your power. Because Machiavelli was right. A ruler who cannot tolerate silence will always lose control to the man who does. According to Machiavelli, never attempt to win the approval of those who gain from your defeat. They ask you a question, and you answer more than you should. You tell them what you meant, why you did it, how you felt. You explain yourself like you owe them something. You think that by clarifying, you're protecting your image. But what you're really doing is bleeding in front of wolves. You don't explain to be understood. You explain because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You explain because you're afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid they'll judge you wrong. Afraid they'll turn against you. Afraid they'll walk away. But here's what you never saw. The powerful don't explain. They watch. They wait. They act. Explanations signal insecurity. Over-talking is an emotional leak. The more you try to justify, the more people start to doubt you. They hear your words and smell your weakness. Because in power dynamics, people don't respond to your reasons. They respond to your presence. And every time you explain, you shrink. You take yourself from subject to object, from force to defense. You think you're clarifying the truth, but you're exposing your fear. You're showing them what matters to you, and that gives them control. Those who don't fear being misjudged become untouchable. Because silence terrifies the manipulator. Stillness confuses the emotional predator. And not giving an answer. That's how you stay in control of the room. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Let them invent their version of you. That's the game. You don't win by telling them who you are. You win by never giving them the chance to define it. The person who doesn't explain becomes a mystery, and mystery always holds more power than truth. So the next time you're tempted to explain yourself, don't. Not because you're hiding, but because you've finally learned power doesn't justify itself. It simply is.